Okay guys, so just quick, before we get on with the lecture today, just a quick catch up on where you're getting on with the second assignment. The first assignment's been marked this week. You'll get the results back this week, probably by Thursday, Friday I'm guessing, because there's a lot of you, even though you wouldn't know from the lecture theatre. How are you getting on with the second assignment, with the task 1? Did you manage to get started on that? Anyone? Yeah, is it working okay for you? Not too. It's going to get trickier, I think, next week when we start doing JavaScript, because this week's going to be more advanced controls. Next week's going to be lots of JavaScript and some code, and obviously I'll need you to make sure that by this time next week you've got your whole site built as a static site, because you won't have time to go back in labs 3 and 4 to go back and make lots of changes to your page designs. So if you can make sure you get your static site designed and built before you come in next week. Right, today's session is all on advanced layouts. So we're going to touch on some of the more advanced topics with jQuery Mobile, and I'm going to have a series of links in the presentation, and the idea is I'll give you an overview, then you go away and have a look at the links, follow the links, and just check it out and make sure you understand the subject. So we're going to be looking at a couple of topics, just really sort of introducing them. The first one is we're going to be looking at lists, how we cope with sorting and searching lists. We're going to be looking at forms and login screens, how we go about building those. Headers and footers, a bit more in depth in there. Navbars, icon swatches, pop-ups, dialog boxes, and how we show and hide elements. Because obviously, when you build your proper site, when you do your dynamic stuff, the add a review button, or whatever it happens to be, you want to hide that until they're logged in, don't you? And the log out button you need to hide until they're logged in. You see what I mean? And the login button needs to be hidden once they have logged in. So you need to be able to hide and show different elements. And I'm going to give you a very, very brief snapshot of how the code looks. Okay, just a teaser for next week, because next week we go into a lot more depth. Okay, so lists. Now, I'm guessing everyone here is going to have to use some lists of some sort in their second assignment. You know, it's almost unavoidable. And if you remember, we take a list, an ordered list, and turn it into a nicely formatted, if you're an iPhone developer, a UI table view. Yeah? If you're not, a list view. So a few extra cool things you can do. Data filter equals true attribute gives you a search box at the top automatically. And as someone types into the box, it will automatically filter the list based on what they've typed in. There is no code required whatsoever. So that's quite a cool feature. So you could pull your films or stuff in, someone starts typing, and it dynamically searches and filters the list down as they're typing. The other one is auto dividers. It takes the first letter of each of your items and groups them alphabetically by letter. So there are two features which are worth knowing about, okay? Because they're going to make your app a bit easier to use. So forms and login screens. Okay, your lab task this week is to build the forms for your app. So you're going to have to design and build lots of forms. You're going to need at least 3 forms, I'm guessing. You're going to have some form of registration form, aren't you? So someone can register for an account. You're going to have a login form of some sort, I'm guessing, so that people can get in and post reviews. And you're going to have a review form, aren't you? So someone can type a review in. Now there's lots of controls, but primarily you're going to use text boxes and buttons. Text boxes and links to build your forms. You've got some other cool things, like you've got star ratings. We can have a little show 1 to 5 stars, 1 to 10 stars. You've got sliders. You've got progress bars. So if someone fills a form in, you can see how far they've got. So there's lots of form elements you can use. The important thing is we use a form ID and field sets to group the forms together. So let me just show you an example of that. Okay, there's your typical jQuery mobile form. So as you can see, I've got div, data role equals field contains, That blocks things together nicely on your page, so you get a nice structured layout. Field set groups the whole form together. You can see at the top and bottom there. You've got labels and inputs, and because the labels say label for password, it will position that label nicely next to the password field for you. So work with the form elements, don't try and break them, don't try and ignore them. All the form elements you've got are designed to work together to produce a really nice looking mobile app form. Important thing is the form must have an ID, okay, because we're going to use that ID when we come to do the code. That's how we reference the data on the form. And every element on the form also has to have an ID. You see that? So I've got ID check user for the form, and then ID username, ID passwords for the form elements. Because we need to be able to pull these values out of the form using JavaScript. If we haven't got IDs, we've got no way of retrieving the data. So if you bake these in lab 2, you'll find lab 3 much easier. What else have we got there? The rest of it's just standard HTML, isn't it? There's nothing special about that form, apart from the bits I've talked about. So very simple HTML forms. Let jQuery Mobile do all the fancy stuff for you. So here we can see the form in use. And what you can see here is I've done a dialog style. You see I popped a dialog box up. And that's what those the style bits are at the top for, to round the corners off and make it look really good. You can't quite see the form elements. Probably better colour would have been a better colour choice. But as you can see, it produces nicely styled form. And obviously, if you make your labels too long, like I have, it starts to break the lines. So building forms is simple and straightforward, but your lab this week is to build all the forms that you need to get your mobile web app working. And then next week we're going to show you how to pull the data out of your web service and populate your mobile web app. And the following week we're going to talk about how we interact with forms with JavaScript, how we actually make them work, how we get login to work, check the credentials, how we check to see if someone logged in. And so by the end of lab 4 you should have enough to get most of your assignment done. Lab 5 is we're going to do lots of mashups. So we're going to look at things like Google Maps, Twitter, Flickr, how we kind of integrate those into our apps. And then week 6, I'm going to probably have another guest speaker in or find something a bit cooler to do, because that's after Christmas, isn't it? The 6th session is the one when we come back after Christmas. And I'm guessing by then you either finished your assignment or you're in such a panic to finish the assignment that you won't listen to anything I tell you. So whichever the case, shall I get a guest speaker in? I might try and get, you remember Tom from last time? His wife is one of the senior managers at Blinkbox, you know, the Tesco Blinkbox. They do a huge amount with mobile web apps and these sort of things. So I'm going to try and get her to come in as a guest speaker. I think if a 305 might be quite a good fit. Alternatively, I've got, what else can I pull on? I've got a guy who works by the airport on a big project with web services at the moment. Okay, a guy called Alex, who I might see this afternoon, the graduation, because he graduated this year. I might get him to come in and have a talk to you about these things. Headers and footers. Okay, you have a couple of options with your headers. As you can see, plain, boring header, you know, text at the top, standard fonts. That's one way of doing it. You can change your fonts. You know how to do that, don't you? Yeah, your font families and get that all changed. And you can add buttons to the left and buttons to the right. So you might have your login button, or you add a new review button. Yeah, up on the toolbar at the top. Your footer, what you've done now, the stuff I showed you in the past, the footers, you probably thought, what's the point of this footer? I've got a box at the bottom of the screen that has the word footer on it. The idea of the footer is it's a good place to put your buttons in. You can put lots of options in there. So, and as you can see, you can add buttons to your footer. You can also have a tab style buttons. You know, it divides the footer into sections with labels. Now I've got black buttons on a black background, but obviously you've got your swatches, haven't you? Your colour swatches that we showed you last week. Remember the theme roller stuff? So you can have whatever colour buttons you want. These are standard graphics that come with jQuery Mobile. If you don't like the look of the graphics, you can leave the graphics off. You can design your own graphics to go on there instead. But footers are very useful for storing your extra buttons and options. Here we are. You can turn a footer into a navbar. So you've almost got like a little tab system, haven't you? Little tabs across the top rather than buttons. You can put your navbar options in the header. I would recommend though you put them in the footer, okay? Because your header is going to be a bit complicated, too much going on. So you can have little split sections at the bottom. It's quite difficult to see from there because unfortunately I've done black on black, which isn't very good. But there's actually sort of a fine grey lines between them. You can change your borders, and you know they're just styled. It's just in CSS. So you have an option of having a tab style interface in your jQuery mobile application and switch between different sections. Okay, icons. There are 18 icons that come with jQuery Mobile. So you've got things like gears for options, ticks, crosses, divides, stars, up arrows, down arrows, left arrows, right arrows, reloads, all those standard options. If you don't like those options, you can design your own icons. You can have whatever icons you want. Now, you can add icons in different places. The classic places are the buttons. You can place a little icon on the button to make it a bit more clear what it's for. But also things like your list views, you can actually place your icons in your list views. You can even have a larger list view. Have you seen the large style, the large design, the big list view? You can have graphics in there. So you can have a list of books and all the book images appear in the list view, the front covers. Technically there is no limit to how you can change this because it's all based on JavaScript and CSS and HTML. So you could actually go and change it radically and become something completely different. But obviously the time scale we've got to get this done, I think you're probably going to stick to the standard elements. Right, again, this is something we touched on last week. I talked to you about the theme roll and about colour swatches. By default, there are 5 different colour schemes that come with jQuery Mobile, ranging from black to yellows to greys and blues and so on. And they're labelled quite imaginatively A to E. So you can change any element to any of those colour swatches. So you could have yellow buttons on a black bar, you could have blue buttons on black, blue on yellow, whatever you want. If you want more colours, you can do whatever you want because you can build your own swatches using Theme Roller. Does anyone know how to go with Theme Roller yet? How'd you get on? Did you manage to download the code? Okay. You design it on this nice graphical interface, the theme roller interface, and then you download the files to your local drive. Then you can put the files on your website, and just put links to them in your head section. So you can build any themes you want, download them, stick them on your web server, and link to them, and then you can have any colour scheme you fancy. So 5 swatches, but you can have up to 26 concurrent colour schemes in your mobile web app. And as you use the colours, you just simply choose the colour in your attributes. Okay, pop-ups, dialog boxes. It's a bit of a mixture today, isn't it? Now, if you look at those lines of code, that's all you need to know about it. Basically, remember how we had data role equals page for your HTML pages? Well, in your list of pages, if you have the data role equals pop-up, if you fire that ID and load that particular page ID, it appears as a popover, as an overlay on the screen. So the only difference between loading a page and loading a popover is the page will have div data role equals page, and a popover, a pop-up, will have data role equals pop-up. Okay, but it behaves in a very different way. So If you look at this one, AH equals popup basic, data rel equals popup tells you to appear over the top of the existing element. And pop-ups work in a very different way. They're modal. You can't have a pop-up and have a button that launches something else over the top of it. You have to dismiss the pop-up before you can navigate. So like a UI alert view, for instance, or a JavaScript alert. It pops up over the top and you have to dismiss it and do something with it. There's all sorts of different styles of pop-up. Tooltips, you've come across tooltips, haven't you? When you select something or hover over something, you get something that pops up. Well, this one, when you tap on something, you can have a little tooltip that pops up on the screen to tell someone how to use it. Menus, you can generate some quite cool menu systems using these pop-ups. Nested menus, you can pop forms up on the screen. If you want a login form that just pops over the top, you can do that. You know, so someone says log in, it simply pops a login form on the top of what they're doing, they type their details in, the form disappears, and they're logged in. Dialogs, you can pop images up on the screen. So it's quite a powerful little feature. Right. So I'm going to go through this last few slides and we'll have a little discussion about your assignment. Okay. So the final bit. This is your first experience of the JavaScript code. This is jQuery. Behind the scenes, jQuery Mobile uses the jQuery syntax, which is a special library of JavaScript functions. So I've put these on, first of all because they illustrate the key syntax of JavaScript, and secondly because they work together to show you how you can show and hide different elements. Now, every page that loads you can call what's called a ready method. And ready basically means it's loaded the interface in and it's ready to display. Like an on load or on display. And what I'm doing here is I've got a div called with an ID of hide me. Okay, look at the syntax in that first bracket after the dollar sign. Dollar means jQuery. The bracket is my selector. Does it look familiar at all? Hash hide me. Where have you seen that before? Or should we call you guys Rip Van Winkle for sleeping through 205, the entire 205 module last year? Where have you seen this syntax? With a hash symbol meaning ID? CSS. It's come straight from CSS. So this one says, when the document loads, find the div with an ID of hide me and hide it. So if you've got a button that appears on the screen, you want to hide the button until someone's logged in, for example like a post new review button, you could simply have that one line of code in your ready method and that will hide the element. It's still there in the code behind the scenes, but it's not visible. And then I've got, on the next block of code, I've got an ID of login button and I've put a click handler on it. So that code will run when you click on the div or the item with the ID of login button. So I tap on it and it says find the element with an ID of hide me and show it. So you do the login process, you could check to make sure it's valid. If it's valid, you'd say $hide me.show, else $hide me.hide. And that's it. That's how you hide and show elements on the screen. We're going to go into a lot more detail next week, but I'm nervous because we've got so much to cover next week. I want to make sure you're at least comfortable with the basic idea behind jQuery, and you can see how it kind of fits together. It's 10 times better than working with JavaScript. Working with clean JavaScript would just be a nightmare for this. It's a nice simple syntax for this to work. So what you're going to do, at the top of your document, you're going to have a JS file, which you're going to link to a JavaScript file, and the JavaScript file will be full of these selectors and methods. Just loads of them to handle the different pages in your app. Okay. Are you okay with that? Can you see how that works? I put a few useful links in there. This is stuff I found useful when I've been developing with jQuery Mobile when I was starting out with it. The best site, to be honest with you, is that last one, the demos page. Anyone had a play with that? You had a look at that yet? Because you can just literally nick the code straight off their demo sites, can't you? Have a play with it, then open the code up, copy it, and paste it into your app. So I tend to just browse the demo site, kind of finding cool stuff, and then building it into my websites. So what I'm going to do now is talk to you about the where we've got to so far. Last week we introduced jQuery Mobile as a new technology, and the benefit of it is you can very quickly build iPhone apps, Android apps, yeah, as websites. And I showed you the basics of how we have single pages with the header, the body and the footer, and we also talked about how we build multiple pages by having all the pages in the same HTML document. Just a quick show of hands, who has built a basic site using jQuery Mobile? Who's had a go at getting something working? Brilliant. Have you tested it in on your phone? And does it work okay? You happy with it? Yeah, it does the job. Right. A lot of apps start out as jQuery Mobile apps. A lot of apps. Things like Facebook, for instance, started out, didn't have native apps, it had a jQuery Mobile web app. You remember you went to the Facebook site and you went to m.facebook.com and it came with a nice sort of mobile web app. That was written in jQuery Mobile. Okay, probably a bit beyond the scope of what you're going to be doing for this module, but you've got the basics. Now, this week we've talked about some of the more advanced features of how we can build more functionality in. The key thing is by next week, by the time you're sitting here this time next week, I need you to make sure that you have your static site completely finished. You have all the pages in there. Every page has IDs. All your buttons have IDs. All your forms have IDs and form elements have IDs. And in theory, next week we simply create a JavaScript file, link it in, and simply add the code to get it to work. That's it. I'll tell you what I'll do. Okay, for the 6th session after Christmas, it's either going to be guest speaker or I might show you PhoneGap. Anyone come across PhoneGap before? PhoneGap? Yeah? PhoneGap allows you to take a JavaScript, a website effectively, and turn it into a native application, an Android app, an iPhone app, a BlackBerry app, and so on. You've probably seen some of the sort of rougher apps on the App Store. They're written using jQuery Mobile and then converted into native apps. And I'm going to show you that. I think I'll show you that because it has some benefits, but it also has some problems. And I think if you experience those problems firsthand, you'll have a much better idea of where you should use it and where you shouldn't use it, and give you a better idea. Your next assignment is a complete working mobile web app. Anyone had to go doing the icons yet? Icons? Okay. I've got one last little section to show you today, and then we'll call it a day, I think. Right. That's the site I would have bookmarked because that's going to give you all the information you need to build your static site. I'm going to talk to you now about something called URL schemes. And we'll come across URL schemes. Okay? It's quite cool. The idea is you use a URL scheme for your mobile web app to interact with the phone hardware and the phone apps that are built into the phone. Before you do that, the way Android phones, the way iPhones do URL schemas is subtly different. So if you're going to do URL schemas in your app, this is a bit of code you need to make use of. You need to find out whether the person is on an iPhone or on an Android device. That makes sense, so you know which schema to use. Navigator.userAgent is the user agent string that gets sent through, the browser sends through, and it tells you which browser is being used. And basically, the way this works is we turn it to lowercase because some browsers send it through mixed case, some are lowercase, so we simplify that. If the word Android appears somewhere in that browser string, we know they're on an Android device. For Apple, it's called Apple WebKit. If the string Apple WebKit appears in the user agent string, they're on an iPhone, an iPod, an iPad, yeah, an Apple device. And the idea is we can display different content based on which browser they're using. Now obviously if you want to support Windows Phone you need to add an extra if statement in there to find an extra block in there. But basically that's how you detect what platform they're working on. Right, so for example you could use a URL to launch a phone app. So you might have a button that says contact us, and they hit the button that says contact us, and the user's phone dials the number. You can have a link which says download the native app, and it takes them straight to the iTunes store to download the app. You can have a link which says send a text message, send an email. So you can start to integrate your app into the apps that are built into the phone. The key ones I'm going to talk about today are mail, sending emails, phone and FaceTime, maybe we'll do phone today, text messages, and the Maps application, whether it's Google Maps or Apple Maps. So you can actually have it say find us on the map, click on the button, and it pops the map over the top with a pin on the map. Okay, really simple, mail. You've probably seen mail tos before. Have you seen those before? With a mail to link, you create a hyperlink, mail to, and then you put the email address in. When the user clicks on there, it pops the compose email window over the top of your application. Really simple. You can even have a subject and a body and pre-populate the subject and the body. Okay, so you create a simple link, turn it into a nice button on your app, or a little button at the bottom, and then you tap on it and it launches the mail app and fills in the fields for them. So that's a very simple way of integrating, and it doesn't get much more complicated than that. Phone numbers, the tel prefix. Obviously you've got to be careful. If you've got a number from the phone, you need to make sure you put the international dialing code in front of it, because you've got no idea where in the world you're going to be accessing this from. So make sure you put the full international dialing code in there. And if they tap on that, it pops up a message saying, do you want to call? They click on yes, and it phones the number for them. So you can integrate the phone app into your application. Text messaging uses the SMS prefix, and they tap on that one, it pops the text messaging screen over the top and allows them to send a message. So really simple little one-liner bits of code, and if you use these in the right places, it's going to make your app much more useful, isn't it? And much more user-friendly. Maps, this is where it differs. Because obviously you've got Google Maps on Android devices, you've got Apple Maps on iOS devices. The scheme is different. For the Apple devices, you put maps.apple.com, and then you put your search criteria at the end. If it's Google, you put a geo prefix. So obviously that means you're going to have to do browser detection, aren't you, to work out which platform they're using to pop the correct map on the screen. So everyone comfortable with that? Everyone see how that works? There you are. And there's a nice simple script which I can embed in my HTML, which will display the correct link at the right place. So I just drop that script in where I want the map button to appear, and it will simply document.write sends that string to the web browser as part of the document. So I can render the page, blah, 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 and then document.write the correct link into my page. Okay, that was it. I've tried it short and sweet, Try and keep things manageable for you. After last assignment, got a bit manic, didn't it? So the trick is with the assignments is try and keep yourself up to date. Try and do one lab a week. Pace yourself. If you start falling behind, you're going to have problems getting towards the deadline. Although having said that, you've got Christmas, haven't you, to finish this assignment off. But I'd rather you enjoyed Christmas and came back refreshed than spent the entire Christmas in jQuery mobile. Okay, that's Christmas is time to not to be doing your assignment work. Any questions about that? Because we've covered lots of bits and pieces today, haven't we? It's been rather bitty today. Don't worry, it'll get much tougher next week. I promise. I promise to make it more challenging next week. So mobile web app finished as a static mobile web app by this time next week. 2 weeks of JavaScript. And then we'll spend the session on web mashups using Yahoo Pipes, Google Maps, Twitter, Flickr, all these different tools. Now the web mashup section of your assignment, that's sort of here be dragons. Basically, we're going to give you some ideas of the sort of mashups you can do, and then you've got to decide, you probably read the assignment already, haven't you? You've got to decide what mashup you can use in your mobile web app. You choose the one that's most appropriate. If you've got lots of geodata and you're floating around in your app, you might choose Google Maps. If you've got lots of images floating around, you might link to Flickr, for instance. Okay, you might do both. So that's entirely up to you for that last task, how you want to implement.